June 22, 1969, a train rolls over a bridge in Cleveland, Ohio. A stray spark falls from the tracks, hits the thick, oily surface of the Cuyahoga River below, and the water itself suddenly bursts into flames. This particular fire was relatively small, yet it became the definitive symbol of an environmental crisis facing American cities. To understand why this specific moment, one of many river fires, became a national turning point, we have to look at the river itself. The Cuyahoga is a young river, carved out at the end of the last ice age. It takes a winding 100-mile U-shaped path through northeast Ohio, flowing south before sharply turning north to empty into Lake Erie. For centuries, Native American tribes used the surrounding valley as a communal hunting ground. But as Cleveland emerged as a major manufacturing center, the lower stretch of the river served as a disposal site for industrial waste. By the late 1960s, the stretch from Akron to Cleveland was effectively dead. The water held almost zero oxygen. No fish could survive. Instead, the surface was coated in a thick, brown, oily film where organic debris didn't sink and drown. It just sat on top and decayed. The industrial runoff was so concentrated that the water was highly combustible. Records show at least 13 fires before 1969. One massive blaze in 1952 destroyed boats, a bridge, and an office building, causing over $1 million in damage. For decades, city leaders and residents viewed this destruction as the inevitable cost of doing business. A burning river was accepted as the natural byproduct of a booming local economy. So when the river ignited again in the summer of 1969, locals barely blinked. Firefighters put it out quickly. It caused roughly $50,000 in damage to a railroad bridge, and local journalists didn't even arrive in time to take a single photograph. The story would have vanished entirely if it weren't for Time magazine. A few months later, the publication launched a brand new section dedicated to the environment, and the editors chose the Cuyahoga River as their premier subject. The timing of that specific issue was perfect. It hit newsstands the same week as the Apollo 11 moon landing and Senator Ted Kennedy's Chappaquiddick incident, which guaranteed a massive national readership. Because the reporters had zero pictures of the actual 1969 fire, they reached into the archives. To illustrate their story, Time published a photograph of the apocalyptic 1952 blaze. Readers across the country opened the magazine and saw terrifying, billowing black smoke swallowing the sky, with tiny firefighters dwarfed by the flames. The text described a river that oozes rather than flows. People instantly connected this horrific image with the rapid decay they were seeing in their own urban environments. The disconnect between an anticlimactic, undocumented fire and a 17-year-old photograph delivered the exact shock to the system the American public needed to confront the state of their waterways. Cleveland's mayor, Carl Stokes, seized the national spotlight. He traveled to Washington to testify before Congress, outlining exactly how much industrial cities were struggling to finance cleanups while fighting massive corporate polluters. Simultaneously, U.S. Attorney Robert Jones launched a federal grand jury investigation. He filed criminal misdemeanor charges against local steel and power companies for dumping massive quantities of cyanide directly into the river. This anger was echoing across the country. Earlier that same year, millions of gallons of crude oil had coated the beaches of Southern California after an offshore blowout. The nation was watching its natural resources collapse on multiple fronts. Facing a total collapse and public patience, the federal government stepped in. This intense political pressure directly drove the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency in 1970. Congress followed up by passing sweeping amendments to the Clean Water Act. The new laws set rigid goals: eliminate the discharge of toxic pollutants, and make America's surface waters safe for fishing and swimming within a decade. This transition moved the burden of environmental health from municipal governments to federal regulators. Legislating clean water was a crucial start, but the Cuyahoga required serious physical engineering to recover. Large sections of the river were still choked by obsolete power-generating dams, which trapped hazardous chemicals in deep pools of stagnant, oxygen-starved water. To fix this, local and state agencies began tearing those barriers down. The recent demolition of dams in Cuyahoga Falls and Brecksville restored the natural flow and allowed life-giving oxygen to churn back into the water. The largest physical hurdle remains the 57-foot Gorge Metropolitan Park Dam, but funding is now secured for a $100 million removal project slated for 2026, which will finally clear out decades of hazardous trapped sediment. The results of this sustained engineering effort are staggering. A river that could not support a single living organism in 1969 now hosts 44 species of fish. By 2019, state environmental officials officially declared those fish safe for human consumption. The ultimate proof of its recovery arrived in 2024, when conservationists successfully introduced 10,000 highly sensitive steelhead trout into the newly thriving ecosystem. The June 1969 fire on the Cuyahoga River was small, brief, and largely ignored by the people who lived next to it. But it ignited at the exact right moment in history, proving that with immense political will and persistent human intervention, a completely destroyed ecosystem can be brought back to life.